2, 1. Okay, we are live.
Hi, I think we are live. Uh, if you can hear me,
Hi.
if you can hear me, you can, let me know in the chat. Okay, all right, cool. So, yeah, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining in if you have joined in. If not, I hope that, you know, um, everything's fine and, you're doing all right at your place, wherever you are, wherever you're from. So, yeah, like today, as the topic of the session suggests, we'll be talking about brainstorming ideas for a hackathon, brainstorming and validating ideas to be precise. And the reason why I chose this topic is because, like I have been, to a lot of hackathons, and I think the number one problem that people face is like what to build, right? I mean, there's so many problem statements at a hackathon, and a lot of people they struggle with, good ideas and whether or not this idea is actually practical. Obviously, it might be very fancy to implement, but maybe it's not that practical, maybe it's not too feasible or useful for that matter. So yeah, just to sort of cover all bases, this is the session for you. And if you participate in hackathons a lot, this is going to be very helpful, hopefully. And yeah, and it's good to be back to the GDSC YouTube channel. I think it's been a very long time since I last did a session on this channel. But yeah, good to be back. Anyway, let's pull up the slides and get started with the session. And yeah, like obviously, if you don't know me, I'm Vaishnavi, and I'll introduce myself a little bit in detail, so that you're not completely unaware who I am and who is even like telling you all of this stuff. So yeah, these are the slides, and let me tell you a little bit about myself. I'm Vaishnavi Dwivedi, also known as Dvichi on Twitter and every other social media platform. And yeah, like I am currently a developer advocate at Scalar Academy, as you can probably see by this logo right here. Is it's for Scalar, and I'm a GitHub field expert and campus expert. So I'm a GitHub field expert for the India region, and I am a former Google Developer Student Club lead at RAIT. And currently, I'm also building a community experience called MichiSpotlight for students who want to navigate their careers in tech, who want to look for different options other than just software engineering and the traditional routes. And yeah, that's pretty much about me. Um, and yeah, like I think if you want to know more about me, you can check out my Twitter or my LinkedIn, and you will be able to do so with the name Dwichi, right? So yeah, I think let's get started. Okay. Faisal says, I guess I can pronounce Dwichi now. Yeah, I know a lot of people are confused about the pronunciation, but it's called Dwichi. So yeah, let's get into the session. By the way, before we get started, I just wanna just put it out there that whatever I tell you today, take it with a pinch of salt. Obviously, this is not something that is concrete. It is very subjective opinion, And this like way of doing things is a little bit organized than the usual way, people think of ideas. It's not like, if you don't go this exact way that I'm telling you right now, that you won't be able to get good ideas. That's not true, because a lot of people, they just like randomly click, and like, they're very observant of their surroundings, and they're able to come up with very good ideas even without like following any process or anything, that is, like very standardized. So yeah, I mean, take it with a pinch of salt. You can obviously like, with this session, I just want to give you an insight into, something called design thinking. It's basically like, a very, very used process by product designers and product managers in startups and big companies. And, like this process, this method of thinking about ideas is like, it has been around for a while. And I'm just going to give you like a very brief overview of how you can sort of position it on, thinking about ideas for a hackathon, right? I mean, there are so many, like there's a lot of less time to build or to think for ideas for a hackathon, right? And sometimes people just like, jump and participate in a hackathon at the last moment, and they don't have much time to think about what they want to build, or how they want to build it, for that matter, and whether or not the team is willing to build it, or like, whether or not they're passionate about the idea itself. So yeah, like let's just quickly go through the session. I mean, it's not going to take more than 30 minutes, hopefully. And yeah, like if you have any questions in between, feel free to put them in the comment, in the chat, or the live chat, and I'll get to them as in when I go back to the chat screen. So yeah, like do put in your questions, and I would love to answer. All right, so let's get started. Now, where do ideas come from? I know that, I mean, like ideas and things, the ideas, usually people, they think of ideas as some sort of treasure, right? People think that, oh, that's my idea, and you can't copy it. And like, if someone does the same idea, if someone tries to implement the same idea, people are like, oh, they copied me and I thought of it first, or something like that. But it's not just about ideas, right? It's not just about the idea itself, it's about the execution. I mean, when you think about it, like if some of you may have watched the Social Network, and the Winklevoss brothers, they may have thought of the same idea as Facebook, but their execution would have been very different than what Mark Zuckerberg brought to life, right? So it's all about the execution. And when it comes to hackathons, which one is more important, ideas or execution? Usually a bit of both, obviously, but I think most of the times, obviously the execution part is judged by people, and the idea is itself, is it's kind of that bonus point that you have, like, so if you have a good execution, as in like if you have written very good code, and you've designed a very good website, everything, you obviously will be evaluated and will be rewarded for that, because I mean, that is essentially what a hackathon is about, right? Building very good stuff. And basically in a hackathon, you're judged by the way, by your ability to write code in a short amount of time, or write code, or just like build stuff. Not just, and it's not just for coders, it's also for designers and people who are just passionate about building, right? But that extra mile that you go, that from a normal participant who is just there for like, having fun, to like, being a winner, or just like grabbing some of the track prizes, or even just like, just making something that is actually usable, something that people can actually relate to or use in the future. That comes with great ideas. And the reason why you should sort of give importance to these ideas is because, if you build something that is, impactful to people, that people can use, I think it's gonna make more impact than, just building a half-hearted, incomplete project and just leaving it on your GitHub, and like, just maybe picking it up when you have an interview or something, and you just have to go through the project and explain it to your recruiters. Maybe you should be like, if you're more passionate about building, then you would wanna like focus a little bit more on what your ideas are, and like, who you're building for. So like I said, I mean, the process that we'll be discussing right now is going to be, it's called design thinking. And I just like to take a minute and tell you a little bit about why design thinking is important. We'll get into what it is, right? I mean, we'll get into, like, it's basically a process that product designers and product managers and people follow in startups and companies. But I mean, just to build good products, with the user perspective as well, and collecting feedback and learning more about who will be using this particular thing that they are building. So that is all a part of this process. But before we get into the technicalities, why is it important for students? So basically, as students, we also build hackathons. Like, we obviously participate in hackathons if we are, like, in the tech space. We participate in hackathons, or we build open source projects, or just all of these places wherever, maybe we're building a side project, maybe we're building a project for our college, or final year project, your mini projects. So many different kinds of projects you have to build as a student in tech, which is usually like people who are in CS, or like who's studying engineering for that matter. But yeah, I mean, like, all of these things sort of come together, and like you'll be able to like build much better projects if you understand this process of design thinking. And like, even while helping out a few students build a side project, I was trying to make sure that they understand what design thinking is, and like try to go in a very organized way rather than a very haphazard way, just like thinking about an idea and then just started coding all together, and not thinking about whether this is actually feasible, what exactly you're trying to do with it or achieve with it, what do you want the user to actually you know um, accomplish with this particular thing that you're building. So usually people are without a goal in their head, or without any plan of sort, especially developers, and especially developers who are like very new to the field at this point, and just like we've just started building projects. So, and a lot of people have this question that how to think of ideas, how do I build innovative projects, because a lot of people, they end up building something like a Netflix clone or a Twitter clone, which is all right to just build up on your skills, and make sure that you are comfortable with some sort of tools, and like whatever that programming languages that you're using, or whatever frameworks that you're using, just to get comfortable with them, you can build like projects like clones and like a little bit unoriginal projects, and that is fine. But when it comes to showcasing these projects to recruiters, or just like putting them forward as open source repositories, or just or a hackathon project or something like that, then you'll have to be a little bit more innovative, a little bit more original in that. So that's why design thinking can be very, very helpful, because it will help you understand people and their problems. And as software engineers, and like designers and people in tech, essentially our job is to understand people's problems, and like solve some of the very common first world problems, at least. Because I mean, most of the first world problems can be solved through tech. A lot of the third world problems that we think about, like climate change, and a lot of the sustainable development goals, and all of those things, those could be a little bit tricky to be solved by tech. A lot of people try to do that. I have tried that as well, personally. But it is a little bit more difficult, because it requires a lot of infrastructure, and like a lot more investment, and a lot more awareness than it requires tech in general, or apps, or the things that we build. So yeah, I mean, just thinking on those lines, a lot of people solve first world problems, which are, I mean, they can be very important, and they can be very impactful as well to people's lives. So you should never, like underestimate a problem, for that matter, and its solution. So I think that should give you enough context. Let me just quickly see if there is, there are a few people here. Okay, Suraj is asking a question which I will get to in just a bit. Okay, like just hang on there, and like I'll help you out in just a bit. So, let's see. Yeah. All right, let's move forward with the session now. So usually what happens is that if you're building a project, if you go to a startup, and you start building their product, right? And then you start, like, with an idea that you have, okay, and then you build it, then you launch it, and then you give it to people, then you see what their feedback is, or, like, things that, that you think about and everything. So, like, that is a whole process, and obviously it's a very difficult thing to do inside of a hackathon, right? I mean, in a hackathon you can't like, you can't complete the entire project within, like, the span of 24 to 36 hours, and then, like, launch it also, and then give it to people also, and then just, like, try to understand and incorporate their feedback. That is very, very difficult to do, and it's very impractical to think about. And that is the usual process that people go through in building projects, at least, like, in startups, and, like, where projects are pretty good and usable, and you know uh, they have some real impact. So this is usually the process. But while building for like during hackathons, what you can try to do is, when you have an idea, learn more about it. A lot of people, what they do is that, like I said, like, a lot of people, they're not able to get good ideas. But then what happens is that, some people, they think of ideas by, just looking at things, or just, like, observing. But then what they do is, they just think that, they just tell people that, whether this idea is cool enough to build, and then they just start building it without giving it much thought. And then afterwards they realize that maybe this is not something that is relevant to anyone, or maybe just, like, they just use a lot of fancy tech, and it doesn't have a real use case, or maybe it's not economically feasible, or it might take a lot of time to build, which is out of the scope of the hackathon. So the first thing is to understand what your idea is, what kind of commitments would it require, and who this is relevant for, right? And this is just like an additional piece of thing, like, that I usually say, that, I'm building a project, and, like, I'm building this a project or that project. I think you can, maybe you can start building products instead in hackathons. I mean, products are not necessarily something that you have to, like, market or something. A product could be for yourself. But what I essentially mean by a product is something that is finished and usable. Right? Not finished completely, but, like, it has, like, a purpose. So even if your app or whatever it is that you're building, so, like, let's just assume that you've built a mobile application, you should ensure that even if it has one feature, it is complete. And if you give it to X person, they are able to perform something on that, and they are able to get something out of it, right? That should be the aim here. Not just, like, another project on GitHub, because I personally hate that. I, like, when I participate in hackathons, a lot of times this has happened to me, and it's very, very difficult to complete your projects. And, like, if you haven't won or anything, then your confidence also degrades, that, okay, maybe it's not worth my time to invest more in this project or something. So yeah, like, I mean, just sort of think, just something to think about, obviously. Again, like, it's just a perspective. I mean, it could be different for different people, but this is just a perspective that I'd like to put forward here. Now, I mean, this is sort of like, how the design thinking process looks like. What is, what if, what wows, what works, right? So I mean, this is just like a very superficial view of what design thinking is, but we'll just break it down a little bit. So this process is usually followed by UX designers. So UX is basically like user experience. I'm pretty sure that, you may have attended some workshops on UI UX. If not, then that is fine. I mean, you can, like, check them out. You can check out, like, learn more about UI UX, maybe, like, once you're done with this, done watching this. But user experience is essentially like a very big umbrella term that has a lot of things under it, like designing and researching more about the user, and making sure the product is usable, and, like, in some ways you can, like, do stuff with it. So I mean, we won't go too deep into this, but just, like, let's just start to, like, sort of build up the blocks here. So, usually what happens is that, if you want to think about ideas in a, like, if you want to come up with good ideas, you can start with who you want to build for, right? Who would be the user? So let's just assume that, you don't have an idea, you don't have anything. So like you can start with something like, okay, maybe I want to build something for my brother because, maybe he he will appreciate it, or maybe I should build something for my mom, or something for, my friends who are also software engineers, or for my friends who are into finance, or something like that, right? So I mean, you can first try to identify the user. Obviously it doesn't have to go this way, this shouldn't always be the first step, but like, and like, even if you do have an idea already, so let's just assume that you want to build a, let's just assume that you want to build a app that that helps you track your carbon footprint, right? I mean, again, like, it's a third world problem, but still, it helps you track your carbon footprint. So even if you do have an idea in your mind already, this is again a way to validate it, right? You can also brainstorm your ideas with this and validate your ideas with this. So if you have an idea, first try to understand who the user will be. So if I'm building an application for tracking carbon footprint of an individual, who would be my target user? It will be environmentalists, obviously, because they are more conscious towards using, being more friendly towards the environment, and they will be like, people who will take the effort to get to know my app and give me some feedback initially, right? So initially my users will be these kind of people who are environmentally conscious, or maybe just like, a group of people who are, maybe students, or professionals, based on like, what kind of features I'm including, or what kind of idea that I have. So first identify who your users are, and like, before the hackathon, if you have time, then try to think of a user persona, as in like, this is something that again UX researchers do and UX designers do, that they create a user persona. They think that, okay, who would, just to sort of empathize with it. So let's just say that I'm creating an app for my brother, so my user persona would be like something like, with a picture of maybe like my brother, or someone who is the same age as my brother, and maybe like giving them a name. Like over here I've created some user personas, calling them Jyoti Pandey, Mithilesh Suri, or Aparna Joshi, or whatever it is that, you want to call them. Maybe you can name your user personas as your friends or your best friends, right? So that you can empathize with them. So okay, Aparna Joshi is like, if Aparna Joshi is my friend, or like, someone that I know, how would I empathize with them? Like, what do I know about them? What are their goals? What are some of their pain points? What are some of their motivations? What are they trying to achieve in life? How will this app, or whatever this idea is, will help them, identify or achieve their goals, or just like make their lives easier. So this is again a way to sort of very like simplify the process of building for a person, right? And making sure that something is usable. So again, identifying the user is a good way to look at things. Now, what problem are you trying to solve? Now, a lot of people, they think that, okay, I should make a carbon footprint tracker, but what exactly is the problem that you're solving? What is the problem? Now, usually in hackathons, they give you a problem statement, but it is very vague at times, right? It's usually just like, okay, just solve something for, mental health, or solve something like, just build something around the environment. So that is not exactly a problem statement. But when you like, when you're trying to identify what problem you're trying to solve with this particular idea that you have, then you have to specify what that problem is, like very like in much detail, as much detail as possible, so that, when you are all, so like these things, whatever it is that, you're trying to prepare, while presenting your hackathon project in front of the judges, if you get the chance to do so, or even in the, mentorship sessions, or whatever it is that you have during the hackathons, you will be able to like tell about these things. You will be able to explain your project better, because you'll know exactly what the idea is, what the problem the idea is solving, and who is it for, right? So that will definitely impress any judge that that you will get in your hackathon, because very less people try to get into the depth of it, right? A lot of people just think about, okay, what tech stack should I use, what programming language should I use, but think about the project itself. Do, like, if you're participating in a hackathon, do it for building something cool and not just for like adding another project to your resume. I mean, obviously that could be a motivation for you, but I think if you do it with that passion for building something for someone, you'll be able to, like, succeed. So that's just like my opinion again. So yeah, I mean, try to make sure that the problem is real, right? So I mean, this is an excerpt from a design thinking workshop that was taken by Google, right? So basically, like, try to identify these four areas. So the first is the user's name. So whatever, like, because you want to empathize with them, right? So over here, maybe like something like Dolores is here, but maybe something like an Indian name you can take, just to empathize with them more, or like, just someone from your local population or your local group. And then try to identify what their characteristics are. So maybe they're a working woman or a student, or like, even student is like a very broad category. So you can specify that, okay, engineering student in Mumbai or something like that. Just try to be as specific as possible, because that will help you build a much better product. That is just like, another thing that I'd like to put forward here. And then try to understand what the user need is. This is which is like, you can like try to, this is like the most important part, that what is the problem that you're trying to solve, right? So who needs a way to overcome imposter syndrome, or maybe like who needs a way to track their carbon emissions or something like that, right? Because is a very important keyword here. And then comes the insight. Why do they want to solve this problem? Why is this problem relevant to them or important to them? So because she doesn't feel like she has earned her place, or she feels like she's a fraud, right? That is what a imposter syndrome is about, right? I mean, this is just like a this is a proper problem statement, right? I mean, other problem statements can be very vague, but this problem statement is very, very clear. It specifies what the user needs, it specifies why they need it, what are their goals, why is this problem relevant to them, and like, most importantly, it specifies who this user, or who is the person who's going to be using, or like who's going to be benefiting from a solution to this problem, right? So just keep in mind these things. It will be very beneficial while presenting your hack as well. So now, how to solve this problem, right? I mean, we know the problem, we know who the user is, we know why they want it, but like, how to solve it? And that's when, our like developer minds come into the play, right? Because we want to make sure that we have the right tech stack, we want to make sure that we have the right tools, and like, the right kind of features that we want to put forward, right? So I mean, this is like this image that you are seeing on your screen right now. So, this is a process of brainstorming ideas, and it's called Crazy Eights, right? So, in Crazy Eights, what you have to do is like, you have like, it's more about doodling and stuff. Obviously, this is just a technique, you don't have to follow it or anything, but it's a very creative way to do things. And like, if let's just say that you end up organizing a hackathon, you can do a workshop on Crazy Eights, like, just sort of allowing people to paint their imagination onto a paper. So like, how this thing works is that, first of all, you like take an A4 size paper and you fold it, right? You fold it into eight parts, and in each box that, that is created because of the folding, um you write like you start creating an idea, like you start doodling an idea out, right? Figure out the details. You can take like around 20 minutes to do so, because why this technique works, because then, like, when you're trying to draw, obviously you're reaching out to a very creative part of your head. And more importantly, it's going to help you like sort of understand the problem. Like, first of all, you already have the problem laid out for you. Then you can reach out to your mind and like you see, what do you think, what your mind thinks is a good solution to this problem. So it's a very creative way to like engage as well. But yeah, so like in my opinion, obviously this thing also works. But in my opinion, what you can also do is that, first of all, a lot of people, what they do is they write down the features. Okay, what kind of features would they want, and like how do we want to like implement them, or like just sort of laying it out. And that's a good way to go as well, because it saves a lot of time. So my advice is to like go a little bit more in depth, right? So you can create sort of a journey map, and it's going to help you as a developer in at later stages. Like if let's just say that 2 days before the hackathon you create a journey map, a proper journey map for whatever like app or web app that you're building, you will be able to like have a very clear picture when you're coding it, right? Even if you're not creating the wireframes, or if you're not like going through the entire like designing and everything. Obviously if you design wireframes, it's going to save you a lot of time. But if even if you have like let's just say that you don't have a designer on your team, you can just create a journey map. So what a journey map is that, let's just say that how a user, like from a user's perspective, like going into the user's shoe, when they start your like when they open your apps, like from the time that they open your app till the time that they perform the action that you want them to perform on your app. Like what are the steps, and what are the things that the user will see, and the things that the user will do. So trying to predict all of these things, and like how would they feel throughout this process, to make sure that you are able to identify, okay, what stage will be difficult for the user, so that you can make it easier when you're trying to code, right? So let's just say that you want to create an onboarding experience for the carbon footprint tracker, right? So like you click on like login, right? And maybe Google sign up or something. So if you don't give the option to Google sign up, maybe the user will be frustrated because they have to enter the entire email and the password twice, and then sign up and then log in again. So just sort of like with a very basic example, I'm just trying to illustrate that this could be a very this could be like a difficult thing. So instead of that, you can just use like a Google sign up or something, just making the user's life easier. And that will earn you a lot of points when you're trying to present this in front of the judges. And more importantly, like more than the judges or anything, like it will make your app more usable. And it will feel more like, okay, this is made by a professional and not just like another student who's just trying to survive in this competitive tech space or something like that. So just sort of mapping that out as well. But yeah, like this is a great way to go forward with that. Right. So this is just a tweet that I had put in. I mean, you can read through it, understand. Like this basically summarizes the entire thing. Like understand the reasons why people use a product or a service, and then lay out the steps that the customer must take to get the job done, and remove the steps until you reach the simplest possible process. So I mean, there might be different steps that a person has to take to start from A to B, right? Or get the job done, like the tweet stated. So you want to make sure that the process of getting the job done is as simple as possible. Just sort of reiterating on that as well. And this is actually by this tweet is actually inspired from a book called Hooked, and it's by Muriel. And if you want, you can read it up as well. It's a very amazing book if you're interested in building products and stuff. So yeah, like it's worth a read, especially if you want to like build a startup or something. And now lastly, I have some good, like some small pieces of advice before we get to any questions that you may have. So some advice that I have here is that try to come up with whatever ideas that you want a few days or weeks before your hackathon is like starting, because you won't have time to do all of these things during the 24 hours or the 36 hours, right? You want to make sure that you have these things ready, because it's not against the rules to keep any of the material about the idea itself ready beforehand. The only rule is that you need to start coding or like building the project from when the hackathon starts, when the after the opening commencement or whatever it is, like whenever they say that it has started. So yeah, like you can make these things, you can make sure that your wireframes, like you can create like a proper prototype of your app on Figma or some other tool, and just make sure like that you have every all of these things ready beforehand, because it's going to save you a lot of time during your hackathon, and you'll be able to code very fast. And the reason why this is very important is because if you've finished with your coding and everything relatively quicker, then you can get a lot of feedback from people as well, especially mentors. You can show them your project, you can get more feedback, you can work on other things as well. Maybe work on making sure that perfecting the UI or just a few features that might take time. So, or like make sure that your project is deployed somewhere. If it's a web application, you can deploy it on Vercel or Netlify or some other hosting platform. And you can like make sure that everything is available on the internet, so that people can also start using it, or just making sure that your whatever it is that you've built, it's finished, like it's a finished product, even if it might not be complete or anything, or you may not have added all the features that you wanted to, but just like a finished product that people can use out there, right? So that is one thing. Second thing is that a lot of people, what they do is they're like, oh, I know Django, so I'm going to make this in Django. So that is how people go about create like building hackathon projects. But you shouldn't do that. I think, in my opinion, you should do a little bit of research about what tools and tech stack is like the best fit for whatever it is that you're trying to build. So if you're trying to build an app, and you think that this app should be like cross platform, maybe like it should be in Android and iOS as well, even though it might not be very relevant, but maybe it will help you. Um, Maybe you want to make sure that the app is ready for both the platforms in the shortest amount of time possible. So maybe you can like use Flutter or something, or for the back end you can like, because see, the reason why this is like a good way to go is because in the real world, obviously you can't I mean, this is how it's going to happen. Like people will tell you that we'll use this stack because this is the best stack possible for the project that you're building. And people won't just like ask you whether you know this stack or not. You will have to learn it, right? So I mean, it's a great learning experience. You can try to build stuff with new tech stacks. It will give you an opportunity to go through the documentation and just learn something very quickly. So I've learned a lot of frameworks. Like I learned React during a hackathon, because I mean, I wanted to build something with React, because I thought that HTML, CSS, and JavaScript alone won't be able to do justice to the project. So I thought, let's just use React. And then, I was able to learn it. Obviously, I wasn't able to learn the entire thing, but just enough to like, get my project done. So I think it's a way like you can try new things, because that kind of experience you can only do during a hackathon. Like you can only experiment on things and like, try learn new things during a hackathon. So that is just another advice that I have. Obviously, it could be different for different people. You might want to use what you're comfortable with because you want to get it done quickly or something. Or maybe most of the tech stacks, so you don't need to learn anything. So it's based on your experience, but this is like mostly for beginners. If you don't have much experience in building with different frameworks, you can take this time to learn new things. So that is again another sort of advice there. And share your ideas with mentors and potential users to get feedback. So what I mean by this is that you can try to give whatever, like if you build an app, then you can maybe build it in an APK. You can give it to some of your friends, ask them to use it, give you some feedback. Like I said, if you're able to finish your project earlier, you can also give it to mentors and get some feedback before it gets into the hands of judges, or you have to submit the project. So just so you can more make sure that you have the best possible version of that product that you could have built in that amount of time. So yeah, that again is just like another advice. And don't be afraid to pivot. So but what I mean by this is keep, a lot of times what happens is that mid hackathon you think that okay, maybe this is not working out, or maybe I'm not using the right tech stack, or maybe this is way too difficult for you to build. Don't be afraid to pivot. That is all my that's just my advice. Don't be like, okay, if I pivot now, then it might not work out or something. This is it's just a hackathon. It's a learning experience for you, and like you don't need to win it. I mean, you can just go ahead and network with people and like make the most out of it just by like talking to a lot of people, learning more about their projects, learning more about their experiences, and just like connecting with them on a personal level, even without like actually winning the hackathon or something. You can make the most out of it. So that is, I think that should be the mindset that one should have when they are like participating in hackathon. So don't be afraid to like change your project in between, or just like change your tech stack also. I've done that multiple times, even though it didn't work out very well for me, but it sort of made me confident in myself. And more importantly, that I was confident that I was able to like do things quickly, and even if I'm changing the project, I will be able to like finish it up in time, because I had faith in myself and my teammates as well. So these are just things that are my opinion based on my experiences, and it might be a little bit different than most people's experiences. So take it with a pinch of salt. You can take some points that are more relevant to you. You don't have to follow everything word by word. You can also say that you're wrong, or that maybe like this is not the right way. But I mean, this sort of all of these things that I've mentioned here, it all worked out for me pretty well. So it might work out for you as well. And I mean, you can mix and match and like make sure that you do things in your own way as well. And maybe like maybe some advice from other people, other veterans in the hackathon community that you may have gotten. So yeah, feel free to do that. Now, let me just quickly go through the questions that. Okay, I think there are quite a few questions here. Oh wow, Ashwin is here. Ashwin is like he wins a lot of hackathons, and I think he has a session today. Not sure if it's today or tomorrow, or it was yesterday or something, but yeah, like hacking hackathons, very very cool. Again, stream on the GitHub Education Campus TV, so you can check out Ashwin's talk over there. Yeah, so let's move on to other questions. So I think whoever the host is, can you like pull up these questions? Like you just have to click on them on StreamYard. Yeah, thank you so much. In my case, I have a lot of ideas to implement and I can do it by myself. But when I try to do same with teammates, I most of the time get in conflict or disagreement. How can I overcome this? This is a very good question actually. So my advice would be that pick your teammates like a little bit with a little bit more uh, caution, because it's very important to have the right kind of people who share your passion towards the project. But again, like if they have some disagreements, you can you should not always think that okay, what I'm thinking is the way to do it. If someone is having any disagreements or anything that they want to add to whatever it is that you're building, you should be more open minded to their feedback. You can write down their feedback. You can make sure that you have like all the points that people have, all the concerns that people have raised, because the more concerns that people raise, the more you know about the edge cases or the roadblocks that you might face in the future pertaining to this ideas when you're building it, right? So if someone says that this might not work, or this feature will be very difficult to implement, you can think about it, and then you can, like, if you think that this is not something that is reasonable from their end, you can try to reason with them. But if they are not, like, if they're not open to feedback, and if you are also not open to feedback, then it's probably not best to team up together with that kind of bunch. So I would suggest that maybe in that case you can find new teammates for yourself. But in this case, like, you can try to reason with them, and it's a very good opportunity to learn more about, communicating your ideas and listening to feedback from other people. So try to embrace it as much as possible. I think this could be a very good experience. uh I think let's take the next question. I hope this answers. um so should I participate in a hackathon solo or team up with random people? um I think, see, it depends, but I would say I would very highly recommend for you to team up with random people, because of two reasons. Because when you team up with random people, obviously you get to work with random people, and those random people might turn out to be your future colleagues, or just like people who you build with, who you build good projects with in the future. Or maybe, like, if you were able to like win a certain hackathon with this bunch of random people, then you can maybe, like, team up with them in the future hackathons, and just be more successful in these competitions. So I would say that try to team up with random people as much as possible. It's a very good networking experience. So yeah, that. I hope that answers your question. Um, okay. So Smithil is asking, should we build a project in Hackathon from scratch, or should we use some templates of code or use some source code? So this is like very subjective, and it depends on the organizers. So you can ask them whether this is actually allowed. In most cases, they ask you to build a project from scratch, but you can obviously use some sort of templates. Like, there are a lot of starter templates where they have already done things like authentication, or like, very mundane things that that you should not take too much time in. So definitely, if you use starter templates, I think that is usually fine only. But I think it is probably wise to probably ask your organizers once. So I think that should work. Is offline hackathon better than online hackathon? Yes, definitely offline hackathons are quite better for a few reasons, and I'll go into them in a bit. So basically, like, in offline hackathons, obviously you get you are more concentrated, in my opinion, because you are in one place with, like, all of your teammates are also in one place. And like, it's, if let's say someone is being very inactive, you can just like slap them, or pour some coffee on them and like be like, oh, start working, don't sit idly or something, right? I mean, but now from all, like, if you're online, then you can't just like go to their house and like slap them or something, right? I mean, you can't do anything if they're inactive. So that is kind of a disadvantage of online hackathons. And more importantly, I think it's much more fun to network in offline hackathons, because you can just go walk up to someone and just talk to them, and like, it'll be because obviously in-person interactions are way better than online interactions. But yeah, like, I mean, in my opinion, everybody, literally everybody, prefers offline hackathons. But I think for a lot of people, online hackathons have opened opportunities, because not a lot of people can afford to travel to another place. Maybe, like, not all hackathons provide grants to travel as well. Some do, but maybe not to everyone or something. But I mean, I think it opens doors for a lot of people who are otherwise not exposed to such events. So I think definitely online hackathons have their own perks as well. But yeah, like, let's hope that offline hackathons happen sooner. Because now, like, COVID is almost like, colleges are opening, and even our college is opening. So I mean, hopefully we'll be able to have offline hackathons soon enough. So yep, I hope that all of the questions are answered. If you all have any other questions, please feel free to ask. I mean, you can also reach out to me on Twitter or LinkedIn. I mean, it's up to you, whichever platform you're more comfortable with. Also on Instagram, some people are comfortable on Instagram. Like, you can just type Dwichi on any platform, and you'll be able to get my name or like my account. And yeah, I'll be happy to answer any questions if you have. But yeah, like, that's it for today's session. And thank you so much for having me. I know this is like short and sweet, and I think that was sort of the purpose. I didn't want to bore a lot of people. But yeah, I hope that you found this useful, and you're able to like implement these things in your next hackathon, and like in psych hacks as well, which is going to be like on this weekend. So I hope that you all have a good hacking experience, and do let me know if you need any help in validating your ideas, if you have any ideas for your hackathon, if you need just any advice on participating in hackathons, or just like want me to like review your uh, I don't know, like your ideas or anything that you've built, feel free to reach out to me. So yeah, thanks a lot. I hope you all have a great evening ahead, and yeah, see you all in the next session. Bye bye.